Good evening, students. Today we're going to be starting our first Math 1 unit, and it is going to be on what we call sequences. We're going to start with our section on functions. So today's notes will come from the section called Relations and Functions. So I'm going to walk you through the notes for today, and in our notes today we have several vocabulary terms that you're going to have to become familiar with. So let's start with what a relation is. A relation is a set of pairs of input and output values. For example, if you look at the set of ordered pairs I have, 4, 7, 3, 2, 0, 0, negative 1, and 0. All of those are ordered pairs that form that particular set. So in this set, I have a set of input values, x, and a set of output values, y. And if you look at the equation y equals 3x plus 5, which we know is in slope-intercept form, if I were to input a value for x, I'm going to get an output value for y. For example, y equals 3x plus 5. If I were to input the value of 0, I end up with y equals 0 plus 5. So here, y should be equal to 5. Some of the characteristics of a relation, there are many ways that we can represent a relation. A relation can be represented as a set of ordered pairs, as you saw in this example. It can be represented in a table value. For example, here's an example of a table. Or it could be represented using mapping, which we'll talk about a little bit later in one of our other examples. Or we can write it as an equation. We can also represent a relation in words or sentences. And over here, I gave an example of what was not an example of a relation. All right, for a function is a relation where every input value has exactly one output value. In other words, when I input a value for x, I get one value for y. So here is an example of a function. I have a graph, this linear, this line. I have an input-output table. So when I input a value for x, I'm going to get only one value out for my y. So in this particular example, I have an input of x is 1, and output of x is 4. I have an input of x is 2, an output of 7, so forth and so on. So I'm getting one value for y when I input a value for x. Some of the characteristics of a function: if you can draw a vertical line through the graph that touches it more than once, it is not going to be a function. So we say that the relation fails the vertical line test. So what is a vertical line test? That simply means that if I were to graph those set of ordered pairs and I were to place my pencil, pen, or whatever you want to place vertically, and I were to draw across that particular graph, it would intersect it in more than one point. If it does, that means it is not going to be a function. And here's another example. This is what we call a mapping. Remember, that is one of the ways that we can represent a relation is by mapping. So in this particular mapping example, we have values of input of x as being 3 and 4, and we have an output of y. Notice that 3 is going to yield a negative 5 and a -2. So there should not be two values for x when I input it. And in this case, there is. And the same thing for my x when x is 4. I should get one value for y, but in this case, I'm getting two values for y. Therefore, it is not a relation. Two other words that I want to introduce are the terms domain and range. The domain of a relation is the set of the ordered set of the input values, which we call the x-coordinate. And the range of a relation is the set of all output values, or what we call the y-coordinate. So these terms are different, however, you have been using them throughout 6th, 7th, and grade. So we all know what an x-coordinate is. Now we're just going to call it the domain. We know what a y-coordinate is. We're just going to call it the range. And then here I give you an example. We have a set of ordered pairs. If we were to determine whether or not they would be a function or not, we would want to probably list our set of domain values and our set of range values. And in this case, I did a mapping to show that 1 maps to 1, 2 maps to 0, 3 maps to -3, and 4 maps to 1. And each one of those in that particular case. Let me double check that. In that particular case, it was not going to be a function. All right, for the next one, I have the values, another set of ordered pairs, and then you can check those. Each one of them has a one particular value or output for y, so it would be a function. Those are two examples of whether or not it is a function or not. Okay, Mrs. Bryant will come and talk about the remainder.
Hi everybody, this is Miss Bryant, and I'm going to go over our guided notes with you guys. So here is our relations and functions review based off of what Miss Looney has already gone over with you guys. All right, so it says here a function is where a relation has only one blank for every blank. So that's one input for every output. And this is where your x values cannot be repeated. Okay, so it's very, very important that we remember that. All right, so there's 4 different representations. There's more, but we're going to look at these 4 specifically. Here we have ordered pairs, a mapping table, and graph. So looking at a set of ordered pairs, we're determining whether or not this is a relation or a function. So looking at the ordered pairs, it's asking, are any of the x values repeating? Well, here's my x's. I have 2, 3, 4, and -2. So no. None of my x's are repeating. So is this relation a function? Yes, because for every input, I have only one output. Now for my mapping. So this first oval is representing all your x values, either from a graph, table, ordered pair, whatever. This is just another way of visualizing whether or not something is a function. And then this set of ovals is representing your y values. So if you look to see here, my x values I have is -2, -4, and -2. My y values are 9, 1, 2, 1. Are any x values repeated? Well, if we look closely, I have -2 and -2. So, yes, we have some repeating x values. So, is this relation a function? No, it's not a function. We would just call it a relation. From a table, it's kind of the same thing. A table kind of better organizes things for you because it generally puts things in numeric order. So if I look at my table here, are there any x values that repeat? No, there's not. So is this a function? Yes, it is. And then from a graph. Here I have a graph of a circle. And Ms. Looney mentioned it earlier, but we're going to use something called the vertical line test. Basically what that vertical line test is this. If I can draw a vertical line through my graph, there's my vertical line. I kind of messed up there, but you guys will be all right. In order for it to pass the vertical line test, it can only touch that graph in one place. But if I look at my vertical line, I circled the places where that vertical line touched the graph. This vertical line touches the graph in two places. So it does not pass my vertical line test. And since it doesn't pass my vertical line test, then no, it is not a function. All right. And for our practice, so we're going to quickly look at these four different ways of representing relations, and we're going to determine which ones are relations and which ones are functions. Okay? So here is my table. It looks like these are my x values, these are my y's. You can't see it in the table because it's really dark, so pardon us for that. If I look, I seem to have a repeat in x values. So this is a relation, not a function. Number two, I'm determining whether or not this relation is a function. So I'm going to utilize my vertical line test and draw a vertical line. This is where it crosses or touches the graph. Since I only drew one circle there, and I only drew one circle because it only crossed it one time, this passes the vertical line test. So this is a function. All right, number three. Again, we're determining whether or not this relation is a function. And I have -2 and 1. All right. Now, -2 is only up there one time. But remember, every input has to only have one output. So if I input -2 into my function, it says I can get 1 or 2. Well, since this input has more than one output, it is not a function. It is a relation. And then last, here I have a set of ordered pairs. So let me see. I'm going to use some colors to help me to determine whether or not I have the same or different numbers, x values in my set. So I'm going to use this color to represent -2. I don't have any other -2s. I'm going to use this color to represent -3. I don't have any other -3s. I'm going to use this color to represent -4. I don't have any other -4s. And I'm going to use this color to represent -5. And I don't have any other -5s. So since I have 4 different colors, meaning I have 4 different x values, then this is a function. Okay, so I hope after going over the vocabulary in our guided notes here that you have a better understanding as to what a relation is and what a function is and how to determine whether something is a function or relation. If you have any further questions, I would really hope that you would contact your math teacher to get the help that you need. If not, I really hope that you guys understood everything we did in today's lesson. Again, if you have any further questions, you can contact your math teacher. Thank you, and have a great day.